You're standing at the edge of a well. The stone is older than your language, older than your country, maybe older than your religion. Somewhere below you, in the dark, is water that hasn't seen sunlight in 1,000 years. And somewhere below that, something else. Because this isn't a story about wells. It's a story about 10 times human beings looked into the dark, found something down there, and made the same decision. Seal it, cover it, walk away. Some of these wells were closed with stone, some with concrete. One, allegedly, with an order from a government that didn't want the public to know what its own scientists had pulled out of the ground. These wells spanned 4 continents and nearly 4,000 years of human history. Different languages, different religions, different technologies. People who never knew each other existed, who never shared a single word of communication across time or distance. And yet, when they found something they didn't understand at the bottom of a well, they all reached for the same solution. By the end of this video, you'll understand why certain holes in the earth are still closed today. Not because we forgot about them, because somebody decided we should. Let's go down. Number 1. The Well of Sacrifice, Chichen Itza, Mexico. The year is 1904. You're standing on the edge of a limestone sinkhole in the Yucatan jungle, and the air smells like wet stone and rot. This is the Cenote Sagrado, the sacred cenote, a natural well over 60 meters wide, its walls dropping straight into water so dark it looks solid. You're Edward Herbert Thompson, an American consul turned amateur archaeologist, and you've just bought the land it sits on for $75. For years, you dredged the bottom with a crane and bucket system, pulling up mud, then bone, then gold. Here's where it gets strange. Researchers eventually recover the remains of at least 200 individuals from the cenote's depths: men, women, children. Many show signs consistent with sacrificial trauma. The Maya didn't just throw people in. They threw in jade, gold discs, incense, weapons that had never been used in battle. Objects made purely to be destroyed by the dark. But that wasn't the disturbing part. Radiocarbon dating shows offerings span centuries. This well wasn't used once. It was used again and again for generation after generation. Then something happened that even modern researchers can't fully explain. Isotope analysis on some child remains suggests they weren't local. Some appear to have been brought from hundreds of kilometers away. Someone was selecting people, transporting them, for years. And this is where everything changes. Spanish colonial accounts describe pilgrims still visiting the cenote centuries after the city was abandoned. For nearly 400 years after the conquest, no serious excavation was attempted. Not because the well was forgotten, but because no one wanted to be the one to bring up what was down there. Today, the cenote is protected. Diving is restricted to authorized research teams only. Most of it has never been fully excavated. There is still material at the bottom no one has touched, sediment layers that could hold answers nobody has asked yet. But this wasn't the only well the Maya considered sacred, and it wasn't the only one where science found something that shouldn't fit its timeline. Number 2. The Well of Bin Tepe, Lydia, Turkey. The year is 1965. You're on an excavation team in western Turkey, near the ancient capital of Sardis, homeland of King Croesus, the man so wealthy his name became a phrase. You're digging into a well shaft cut into bedrock. At first, it looks like a simple utility well. Then you hit a layer that doesn't belong. Roughly 10 meters down, the shaft is blocked by tightly packed stone that doesn't match natural collapse. Someone filled this well on purpose, and then kept digging past it anyway. Here's where it gets strange. Below the blockage, your team recovers metalwork fragments consistent with Lydian goldsmithing, the same techniques tied to the invention of coinage itself, sometime in the 7th century BCE. Was this connected to the royal mint? A hiding place during the Persian conquest of 546 BCE, when Cyrus the Great overran the kingdom? But that wasn't the disturbing part. Deeper still, the shaft narrows into a hand-cut chamber, too small to stand in, large enough to sit in. No food remains, no tools, no sign anyone actually used it to survive. If it wasn't for hiding a person, what was it for? Then something happened that shifted the theory entirely. Later surveys showed the well sits on a direct line between two royal burial mounds, one long associated with Aliats, father of Croesus. A blocked well, aligned with royal tombs, containing precious metal and a hidden chamber with no clear purpose. The site was resealed for structural preservation after excavation. It hasn't been reopened since. Whatever conclusions the original team reached about the chamber's purpose never made it into a widely published final report. And Bin Tepe isn't the only necropolis where a well runs directly beneath the tombs of kings. The next one is in Egypt, and it took nearly a century to fully bring to the surface. Number 3. The Osiris Shaft, Giza, Egypt. The year is 1935. You're standing near the Great Sphinx, and beneath your feet is something almost nobody outside Egyptology knows exists. A vertical shaft cut over 30 meters into bedrock. Egyptologist Salim Hassan documents it first, naming it the Osiris Shaft after the god of the underworld. You climb down by rope ladder, and the temperature drops with every meter. Here's where it gets strange. The shaft leads to 3 descending levels. The lowest holds standing water forming a small underground lake around a stone sarcophagus resting on what looks like a symbolic island. To ancient Egyptians, this mirrored their creation myth exactly. The primordial mound rising from the waters of chaos, birthplace of the first god. Someone built a physical model of the underworld and buried it beneath one of the most recognizable monuments on Earth. But that wasn't the disturbing part. The sarcophagus was found empty. No body. No confirmed burial. If it wasn't for a body, what was the lowest chamber for? Zahi Hawass led a renewed investigation in the late 1990s, confirming the structure but never explaining the empty chamber. Was it symbolic? A rebirth cenotaph never meant to hold a body? Or built for someone whose burial never happened? For most of the 20th century, the shaft stayed closed to the public and largely unpublicized. Tourists walked past the Sphinx with no idea a flooded underworld sat beneath their feet. It's since opened for limited escorted visits, but large sections remain officially unexcavated. An empty sarcophagus, a man-made underworld, built to be found and then hidden anyway. And here's the detail that keeps researchers up at night. The shaft sits almost directly in line with the Sphinx itself, as though the entire structure above was positioned in relation to what was buried below, rather than the other way around. But Egypt wasn't the only culture that buried a symbolic underworld inside a well. What archaeologists found in Central Europe is even stranger. Number 4. The Well of the Hanged, Bohemia, Czech Republic. The year is 2011. You're on a construction site in a small Czech town when your excavator hits stone the blueprints say shouldn't be there. Archaeologists are called in. What they find is a medieval well, dry for centuries, its shaft packed with the remains of at least 30 individuals, tangled together, unlike a normal burial. Here's where it gets strange. Forensic analysis shows most of the skeletons carry no signs of violence, no sword wounds, no blunt trauma. Radiocarbon dating places the remains in the mid-14th century, the Black Death, which killed an estimated third to half the population of some regions. A mass grave in a plague year isn't unusual. The location is. Medieval communities almost universally buried plague dead far from water sources, fearing contamination. Here, they used a well built specifically to provide drinking water. But that wasn't the disturbing part. Several skulls showed decapitation performed after death, with stones placed deliberately near the bodies, a practice historians associate with anti-revenant rituals meant to stop the dead from rising. They weren't just disposing of bodies, they were afraid of them. Similar deviant burial wells, featuring decapitation and weighting, appear at other plague-era sites across Central Europe, a coordinated set of beliefs about what happens when the dead die badly and in numbers. The well was filled immediately and never used again, forgotten beneath a residential street for nearly 700 years. No written record from the town explains who made the decision to use this specific well, or why it was never reopened even generations later when the plague had long passed and clean water was scarce again. Some wells were sealed out of fear of disease. Others were sealed for the opposite reason, because what was inside them wouldn't decay at all. Number 5. The Mercury Well, Teotihuacan, Mexico. The year is 2015. Your archaeologist, Sergio Gomez, 18 meters underground in a tunnel sealed roughly 1,800 years ago beneath the Temple of the Feathered Serpent at Teotihuacan, one of the largest ancient cities in the Americas, whose builders remain unidentified to this day. Your instruments pick up something that shouldn't be there: liquid mercury. Here's where it gets strange. Your team documents large quantities of it pooled at the tunnel's end, alongside jade statues, jaguar remains, and a carved box of shells. Mercury offered no practical use here, no industrial function. It was placed deliberately, in an amount that would have made anyone handling it sick over time. One theory: its shimmering surface was meant to represent an underworld river, much like the flooded chamber beneath the Sphinx. But that wasn't the disturbing part. Despite years of excavation, no confirmed ruler burial has ever been found at the tunnel's end, even though everything about the site suggests it was built to honor someone extremely important. Teotihuacan left behind almost no readable written language, and no confirmed royal portraiture. We know the city held up to 200,000 people at its peak. We don't know what its rulers called themselves. Then something happened that deepened the silence. Around 550 CE, the city's monumental core was deliberately burned and destroyed. But the tunnel beneath the temple was sealed off before that happened, protecting the mercury chamber from the destruction above. Someone made sure whatever was down there survived the collapse of their own civilization. Due to mercury toxicity, sections of the tunnel remain restricted, and excavation teams have had to work in shifts using protective equipment simply to continue documenting what's already been found. Researchers still haven't confirmed what or who lies at the very end. But mercury appears again later on this list, sealed for a reason that has nothing to do with religion at all. Number 6. The Roman Well of Bath, England. The year is 1727. You're a laborer in Bath, England, when your tools strike metal beneath the mud of an ancient spring, the sacred spring of Sulis Minerva. Archaeologists eventually recover over 12,000 Roman coins from the water, along with more than 130 inscribed lead and pewter tablets. Here's where it gets strange. The tablets aren't gratitude offerings, they're curses. Roman visitors wrote the names of thieves and enemies, rolled the tablets up, and threw them in, asking the goddess to inflict suffering until the wrong was made right. This wasn't a wishing well, it was a courtroom, and the goddess was judge and executioner. But that wasn't the disturbing part. Several tablets don't name a specific person at all. They curse an entire list of unnamed suspects, covering every possibility. Then something happened that historians still debate. As Christianity spread through the empire, the temple complex fell into disuse. Some attribute this to Rome's general collapse in Britain after 410 CE. Others point to something more specific: a shift away from a religious system built on curses and divine punishment. The site silted up, effectively sealing the well for over 1,000 years. Bath holds one of the largest concentrations of cursed tablets ever found in the ancient world, far more than any other sacred spring across the empire, including sites in Rome itself. Why here? No one has a confirmed answer. Cursed wells appear more than once on this list, and the next one was allegedly cursed by the people who built it. Number 7. The Well of Death, Jaisalmer, India. The year is 1998. You're documenting a step well in the Thar Desert of Rajasthan, one of thousands built across the subcontinent, some descending over 20 meters through carved staircases to reach groundwater. This one is different. Here's where it gets strange. Local historical accounts claim it was sealed after multiple deaths during construction, deaths locals attributed not to accident, but to the site itself. Stepwell construction was always dangerous across the region: collapses, disease, heat stroke. But tradition here says the deaths were different enough that the ruling authority halted construction permanently. An unfinished stepwell in a region where completing one was a matter of civic and religious pride. But that wasn't the disturbing part. Surveys found stonework abandoned mid-carving, tools left in place, as if workers walked away mid-task and never returned. For generations, communities maintained that the well shouldn't be used or entered, not for structural reasons, but because it was, in their words, unfinished for a reason. It remains largely unused today, despite chronic water scarcity in the region. In a desert where water can mean survival, a community chose, generation after generation, not to use a well that already existed. Rajasthan's stepwells are otherwise celebrated and actively restored. This is one of the rare cases where memory pushed toward abandonment instead. Someone, centuries ago, decided this well should stay empty. That decision has outlived everyone who made it, passed down not through official record, but through generations of parents telling children which well not to approach. Number 8. The Silbury Well Shaft, Wiltshire, England. The year is 1968. You're tunneling into Silbury Hill, the largest artificial prehistoric mound in Europe, built around 2400 BCE, contemporary with nearby Stonehenge. No burial chamber has ever been confirmed inside it. Your team investigates something stranger. A vertical shaft near its base, cut into bedrock, extending below the water table. Here's where it gets strange. The shaft appears deliberately excavated to reach groundwater, but it predates most confirmed well technology in Britain, and its position suggests it was planned as part of the same project as the mound itself. The nearby River Kennet already offered accessible water. This well wasn't necessary. Why dig a well you don't need, beside a mound you can't explain? But that wasn't the disturbing part. Excavation records describe the shaft as backfilled in antiquity with deliberate, alternating layers. Not collapse, not gradual siltation, but organized fill containing organic material from different periods spanning centuries. The shaft wasn't sealed once. It was reopened and resealed multiple times by different generations over an extended span of prehistory. Someone kept coming back. Someone kept closing it again. By the 21st century, unstable voids linked to the original shaft threatened the mound's structural integrity, forcing English Heritage to backfill the interior with over 1,000 tons of chalk between 2007 and 2008. We resealed a monument we still don't understand, using the same instinct the people who built it apparently had. Some things get sealed because we understand the danger. This one was sealed by people who may have understood something we still don't, and then sealed again, thousands of years later, by engineers who arrived at the same conclusion without knowing it. Number 9. The Jiaozuo Shaft Wells, Henan Province, China. The year is 2004. You're surveying farmland in Henan Province, where dozens of narrow shafts, some over 30 meters deep, connect through an underground tunnel network. Here's where it gets strange. Regional records link the area to mining activity over 2,000 years old. But researchers believe the network was later repurposed for something else entirely during periods of conflict, possibly as evasion routes allowing people to move beneath contested ground unseen. But that wasn't the disturbing part. Several shafts were found deliberately collapsed from within, not from the surface, meaning whoever sealed them worked backward toward an exit, closing each section behind them as they went. Someone sealed this network from the inside, which means they either had another way out or didn't survive the process. Artifacts from different sections span multiple historical periods, suggesting the network was reopened and reused across different eras by unrelated groups who simply inherited a structure and adapted it. Large sections remain unexcavated, citing structural instability. Ground-penetrating radar surveys suggest the tunnel network extends significantly farther than what's currently been mapped, reaching beneath land that has never been formally surveyed. We know people used this place for a very long time. We still don't know why it existed in the first place. Number 10. The Sedlec Well, Kutna Hora, Czech Republic. The year is 1970. You're clearing debris beneath a monastery in Kutna Hora, near the town's famous ossuary, a chapel decorated with the bones of an estimated 40,000 to 70,000 people. Beneath the monastery grounds, you find a well shaft sealed with worked stone, unlike any utility well elsewhere on the property. Here's where it gets strange. Monastery records describe the site as built atop earth brought back from Golgotha by a returning abbot in the late 13th century, soil considered so holy that people paid enormous sums for generations to be buried near it. The well sits almost directly beneath that ground. But that wasn't the disturbing part. When opened, the shaft contained no water, just compacted soil mixed with disarticulated human bone, distinct from the cemetery burials above. Bones don't migrate downward through solid stone construction. Someone placed this there deliberately, then sealed the shaft with stone shaped specifically for that purpose. During the 14th and 15th centuries, the Black Death and the brutal Hussite wars overwhelmed the cemetery's capacity. A half-blind monk was tasked with organizing the overflow. The same bones later arranged into the ossuary's famous displays. The well may be an earlier, cruder version of the same problem the ossuary later solved visibly. But if that's true, why hide this batch underground instead of placing it with the rest? The bones in the ossuary were put on display for the world. The bones in the well were hidden instead. Someone decided some remains belonged in the light, and others belonged in the dark. We still don't know what made the difference, or whether the well holds the remains of people the monastery didn't want associated with the ossuary at all. 10 wells, 10 civilizations, 10 decisions to close a hole in the earth and walk away. A cenote in Mexico, used for centuries, never fully excavated. A tomb complex in Turkey, resealed and never reopened. An underworld beneath the Sphinx, its central chamber empty. A plague well in Bohemia, its dead mutilated to keep them from rising. A tunnel of liquid mercury hiding the identity of rulers history forgot. A cursing spring, abandoned when an empire's beliefs about justice began to change. A stepwell in India, left unfinished by choice, avoided by choice, for generations. A prehistoric shaft resealed by ancient hands, and resealed again in our own century. A mining network sealed from the inside by someone who may never have walked back out. And a hidden well beneath consecrated ground, holding bones its builders decided the world shouldn't see. 10 cultures, 10 centuries, 10 different reasons. But the pattern is the same every time. Someone found something down there. Someone made a decision about what to do with it. And across every continent, across thousands of years, with almost nothing connecting one culture to another, they made the same choice. Not destroy it, not display it, seal it. Maybe that tells us something about human nature, that when we find something we don't fully understand, our instinct isn't curiosity, it's containment. Or maybe the people who sealed these wells understood exactly what they were dealing with. Maybe they weren't hiding something from history. Maybe they were protecting history from it. The wells are still there. Most are still, at least partially, sealed. The questions they were sealed with are still unanswered. And somewhere, right now, there is probably another well. One we haven't found yet. One that's still waiting for someone to look down into the dark and decide what happens next. Because that's really what this story has been about, from the very first cenote to the last stone chamber. Not water, not treasure, not even the bones. It's about the moment a person stands at the edge of a hole in the earth, looks down, and has to choose what kind of world they want to live in. One where the answer gets pulled into the light, or one where it stays buried, on purpose, for reasons that outlive everyone who made the decision. 10 times, across 10 civilizations, people chose the dark. Maybe the 11th well is still out there. Maybe it's already been found, and someone, somewhere, is standing at the edge of it right now. If you had to make that choice, would you seal it, or would you look?